All right.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for coming today, and especially in July when it's like halfway nice out. So I am officially calling this meeting of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee meeting to order. We're going to get started with a roll call vote. But I should first mention that this meeting is being video and audio recorded. All right. Just respond in affirmative when I call your name. So Hillary Hedges-Raport.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
Tim Brain.
Here.
Doug Rose.
Here.
Jen Carberg.
Here.
Nantucket Land Bank. Liz, you can change your name, or if you want to say who you are.
Hi, Liz Phelps. Sorry it appears that way. I'm not sure how to change it, but I will try.
Thanks, Liz. Matt Fee.
Here.
And Christy Kickham. Christy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. And Sarah Boyce, Vice Chair, filling in for Peter Brace today. All right. And we don't have any, aside from Leah, we don't have any town staff. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is public comment, but I actually don't see any members of the public. Just for the official record, this is the public comment is for items not on the agenda. But Leah, I can just move on, right? If there's nobody here from the public. Great.
Yes.
Thanks. All right, so moving on, the next item on the agenda is we don't have any minutes to approve right at this point. So we're gonna move straight on. See, this is gonna be like a nice quick agenda. We're going to welcome our new members. So we have Hillary Hedges-Raport and Liz Phelps, but Hillary, if you'd like to introduce yourself first.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm Hillary, and I am the representative from the Planning Board. As I'm sure you all know, I ran for election last May and was elected to the Planning Board. I'm currently serving a one-year term because it was sort of the end of someone else's term. So I have a background on Nantucket in historic preservation. I have a master's in preservation studies. I also restarted the Historical Commission that was sort of dormant back in 2019 and chaired that commission for 3 years. The Historical Commission is responsible for preservation planning. So that's one of the things that I hope to bring to this commission is interest in overall planning and zoning, as well as an emphasis on looking after our historic resources. I requested to serve on this committee if Dave Iverson was wanting to step down, given his chair responsibilities, and was very thrilled to be part of it. So looking forward to listening and learning, and very interested in bringing together our zoning vision and using our zoning tools available to us to achieve overall community goals, including coastal resiliency.
Great. Thanks, Hillary, and welcome to the
Thanks.
CRAC. And just for the record, we have Joanna Roche has joined us. And Joanna, you just want to make sure you are respond in the affirmative. Thanks. She waved. And then we have Vince Murphy as well, town employee. Just Vince, you can. Thanks. All right. And then we have a new representative for the Nantucket Land Bank, Liz Phelps. Liz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. Thank you, Sarah. Liz Phelps. I've been working for the Land Bank now going on about 3 years. I've listened in on a few of these meetings, but now I'm going to be participating as a member. Rachel is stepping down. She's got quite a bit on her plate. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone on these important issues. I have been involved with the Land Bank on other projects, such as the Francis Street project with Leah in the town. So looking forward to trying to bring it all together and working on these important issues that face us as a community.
Great. Thanks, Liz. And I know just for Hillary and Liz, or I know Hillary asked this question of Leah, but with the town changing the system of how they present the agenda and minutes, past minutes are available. If they're not there for some reason, it's kind of a transition phase. But if you have any questions about anything that comes up or any of the past stuff, all the CRAC meetings have been recorded too. So, you can reach out to any of us or me as vice chair and Pete as chair if you have any questions.
Great.
All right. That's all the new members. Yes. Okay. All right. So the next item on our agenda is it's that time of year where we appoint new officers. So our officers are chair, vice chair, and secretary. And let's see. So I do know so we're gonna go like chair, vice chair, secretary, and so Pete is on vacation right now, so he could not be here, but Leah has confirmed that he is interested in continuing as chair. And so we can have a discussion of that if there's any discussion, or we can move to a vote, but I'm going to open it to the floor.
I'll make a motion that he remain as chair.
Second.
Okay, thanks. We have a motion and a second. So I will move on to a vote. So we're going to have roll call vote for Pete Brace remaining as chair. So Hillary,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Jen. Oh, sorry, Jen, I didn't hear you. I saw you, but I didn't hear you. Okay, it's like, yeah, I got part of what you said. You said aye. Liz,
Aye.
Christy,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Matthew,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. All right, so unanimous. Pete being sworn back in or voted back in as chair. For vice chair, I've been the vice chair the last year. I'm happy to remain as vice chair unless there's any other discussion.
I'll make a motion to nominate Sarah for vice chair.
I'll second it.
Second.
Leah, I don't know if I'm allowed to like oversee this vote since it's about me.
I think you are, right?
Okay.
Vince?
You
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
All right. No pressure, you guys. Roll call vote. Hillary Rayport,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Liz Phelps,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Joanna Roche,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
and chair abstains. So, okay. Thanks, everybody. All right. And so everyone's favorite position, secretary. We have had Tim Brain and then pinch hitting Doug Rose for the past year, I guess, or a year and a half, or I don't actually know how long. Is there interest in the committee for secretary?
I'm happy to keep doing it. Unless you'd like to replace me, which I will not be hurt, but.
I think you've done a bang up job, Tim. I'm going to nominate Tim Brain for continuing as secretary.
Second.
Great. And know that if you need backup, any of us could fill in if you are going to miss a meeting, etc.
Yeah,
So.
it's been
Absolutely.
fine. Honestly, the shorter format makes it much easier too, so.
Great. All right, well then roll call vote for Tim Brain remaining as secretary with support from the rest of the committee. Hillary Rayport,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Abstain.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Liz Phelps,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Joanna Roche,
Aye.
and Matt Fee.
Aye. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And chair votes aye. So great. You guys, that was the easiest appointment of officers I think we've had in the like.
I was
6
just gonna
years.
say that. That went very smoothly.
Mhm.
Well done. We're a well-oiled machine at this point.
Not to
Um,
check, but I also just double checked it, and fine for Sarah and Tim not to vote for themselves, but you could have.
Okay, thanks.
Uh,
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate that. Good to have a point of order to know what the rules are. All right, so the next is about the first and second quarter report, which you should have all gotten in the packet. And so Leah, if you want to go ahead and present the reports.
Yes, let me share my screen. So I'll go through the slides. What I'll need input in for is, well, any edits or additions. And then at the bottom or the last slide, there's always, and we don't always need to fill it in, but there's a recommendation for the select board. So I'll need the committee's help with that. All right, make sure I share the right screen. Okay, can you all see that? And it's
Yep.
not the presenter view, right? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so this is the first and second quarter report. So from January to June of 2025. It was requested that I give kind of an overall like coastal resiliency update to the select board. So this slide is just an update of the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project, which again is a collaboration partnership between the town, the land bank, and Remain. We'll have to fill in highlights from the quarter. So as I go through the slides, if anything pops up as a highlight, let me know. Okay, so Libby and Brian came onto CRAC to talk about the letter that Joanna wrote and that CRAC all endorsed to send to the select board about creating some sort of different mechanism for coastal resiliency funding for those larger construction projects or grant matching that is, you know, a lot of money, more than the $1 million a year. So they said that they don't recommend the special purpose stabilization fund because there's a lot of barriers. Town meeting has to vote to get it in, town meeting has to vote to get it out. They did say that they could maybe amend the specific uses for the beach revolver. So currently that funding goes to the police department and then also for natural resources for beach management. So, you know, endangered species, lifeguards, etc. But that it might be able to get amended to be able to use for coastal resilience projects. Then I gave a presentation on the overall downtown neighborhood flood barrier recommendations within the coastal resilience plan. And it's really going to need coordination, both public and private, to ensure that our downtown flooding is reduced today and in the future. And then that segued into a discussion with the private property owners within the downtown neighborhood flood barrier. Specifically, members from the Brant Point Association came and told us about their flooding experience and their experience with raising their homes and going through the different permitting processes on island. So that was really helpful. And then CRAC voted quarterly to invite any of the private property owners, you know, as long as we have their contact information, to come to a meeting that would be dedicated to talk about the downtown neighborhood flood barrier and coordinate efforts. Chuck Larson came and gave us a presentation on the data that he's been working up from the NOAA tide gauge since the 60s. So that was very interesting. And then I gave a presentation on the Easy Street Flood Mitigation Project with the 3 different design options and got feedback from you all about it. The next steps for that, so our grant just finished on June 30th. We do have a final report, which I need to upload to the town's project website. And that is a very extensive report, but it goes into a lot of detail about the project and the different designs and gives some concept level cost estimates. So now that the grant's over, we did get funding through town meeting to move this project forward. So with whatever design is chosen by the select board, we now have funding to move that to full design and permitting. I'm working on an updated scope that would include better outreach and engagement. So like more often contacting and engaging with the community and sending out information, via social media and other outlets to get the word out and continue the conversation on the project. We're also going to do a pump station feasibility within that area because with whatever design we choose, we do need a pump station to be able to pump the stormwater, or if, any coastal storms come and overtop, that water needs to get pumped out. And then we're also going to update modeling with the 3 different design options to see if there's any adverse impacts on abutting properties. Joanna, do you have a question about this slide or, okay.
I do.
Sarah, is it okay to take it?
Yeah, if it's okay with you, Leah, unless you want us to wait till the end.
I think it's fine if it's like about a particular slide, we can just
Okay.
go that way.
Okay, go ahead, Joanna.
I'd like to understand what the approval process will be for choosing one of these options. And then I want to understand the amount of funding that was approved. I think the committee should understand that, and then how that will be deployed in this project.
Sure. So
Great.
to answer your first question, ultimately the select board decide which design to move forward. We've gotten a lot of community feedback on them. We're going, as I mentioned, we'll have a better outreach and engagement plan, which will have more open houses for people to be able to, either virtual or in person, we haven't decided yet, to be able to come and ask questions and give feedback on these designs. And then all of that will be given to the select board and ultimately they decide. As far as how much was approved, when Jeff came on right before town meeting, he went through all of the natural resources projects that were up. And this one, I believe it's 2.4 million for full designs, permitting, and construction bids, bid ready documents. And what was your third question?
The timeline. So what's the timeline to when the select board makes the decision? And then what's the timeline for the spend of the dollars?
Right. So as far as the select board making the decision, when we went this winter and gave them a presentation about the 3 design options, they had a bunch of questions. And so the scope is working through to answer those questions and also answer the questions from the community, and also gather more data. So we want more data about for example, groundwater table rise within the project site. We know it's high, but how high is it? And can we work that into Mark's model with that he's working on for groundwater table rise for the Wannacomet Water Company? So once we get more information and more data collected and feedback from the community, that will be presented to the select board, and then ultimately they'll decide the timeline for that, whether they're ready to make a decision or not, and if not, what other information do they need? And then as far as permitting, that can take, if all goes well, can take a couple years. If all doesn't go well, can take a lot of years. So within the final report, there's a breakdown of a timeline for that. But for, if all goes well for construction, we're estimating like about 3 years out. And I can share, once the report's on the project website, I'll share it with you all. And there's, lots of information and a timeline, a schedule for the different design phases and permitting and all of that.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Leah. And I just want to remind everyone, it's important for us to have all this information for each project, but the purpose of this right now is for the summary of what Leah is going to be presenting to the select board. So keep that in mind if there's something that you want us to discuss more, because later in the agenda, we're going to have a couple options about next steps.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So I'm going to continue on. Let's see. Okay, and then Catherine McCandless from Boston came and gave us a great presentation on all of the steps that Boston has taken for coastal resiliency. And then she honed in on this specific project, the Resilient Bennington Street and Fredericks Park, which is a road raising project. And then these are just the preferred alternatives for, or preferred design for each of the kind of 3 areas of that project. Jeff came and talked about the capital appropriations for the natural resources that had to do with coastal resiliency, and all of those got funded. So we're so thankful to the voters for that. And we have a lot to get done in the next year. You all gave final input into the Nantucket Harbor's action plan for the coastal resiliency section, and then that will be worked into the final draft. And I believe Peter said, I think sometime next week is when they'll send it out to the public for comment, but I don't know specifics for that. And then there was, discussion about the updating regulations or inserting coastal resiliency into the zoning regs. And you all finalize that list. And then we developed the internal work group, which has a CRAC member, Doug, a planning board member, Dave Iverson, and then staff, myself, and Meg Trudell. The update, nothing has been updated since Doug updated that, I don't know, 2 months ago or so. First, what we'll do is make sure that the 2020 mandatory floodplain zoning stuff is updated, and that needs to go through town meeting. And then once that is approved, then we can work on trying to get like the higher standards approved too. And Hillary, I can send you that information since you're the new planning
That would
board.
be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a question I was going to ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I gave a presentation about the dune stabilization pilot project that is going on in Dionis and in Mattakit. Holly Backus came and talked about historic preservation and HDC, and we asked, how can CRAC help HDC as far as coastal resiliency goes? And she had recommended that you all can give input on the impervious surfaces and materials, that would be helpful for the HDC. And then I don't know if any of you attended, but the June 10th meeting was going to be at the Coastal Conference. Unfortunately, I was sick, so I wasn't able to be there, but it sounded like it was a great turnout and people really liked the presentations. The keynote was from the director of the Office of Coastal Zone Management, and the sessions included local planning, coastal resiliency, neighborhood and property scale adaptation, and there was at the end a panel about retreat. For public outreach, the coastal resiliency posts are every Thursday on the Natural Resources social media, and then Acclimate has created short videos about CRAC members, which is shared on NRD and Acclimate, and then occasionally when it works into the town Instagram schedule, it's there as well. And then I give coastal resiliency updates that are published in the town manager's newsletter, which is monthly. Okay, so this is the last slide. From January to June, if there were any requests or recommendations within that time that CRAC would like to give to the select board, this would be one to open up that discussion and either add anything or not. And I'm also happy to go back to any slides if there's particular questions or additions or edits.
Leah?
So Hillary, I'll read the comments. It's fine. So Hillary, do you have any comments? You can go ahead.
Oh, so should I raise my hand if I want to say something?
Yeah, it's fine though. Yeah, we try to be formal, but at the same time, we're sometimes a little bit informal. So if it seems like there's not a lot of comments right now, so it's fine. You can totally go ahead. There's no one else ahead of you.
Okay, thanks. I had a comment on the presentation, Leah. I really appreciated the summary. I wondered if it would be a good idea to include, when you go through kind of each of the milestone activities or achievements, to put the date when they happened, because then if people want to go and find the meeting, it's just a lot easier to go find the recording, oh, I missed Holly's presentation at the select board, and then the date would be there. And I think it also would help show, how much time, how long the duration of activity. And then my other comment would be, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but when you talk about appropriations at town meeting, would it be a good idea to put the dollars, just to keep everybody focused on, what an enormous effort this is and the demand for financial resources?
Yep, those are two great additions, and I can add those to the report if everyone can, you don't have to say yes, but you can just shake your head or if you agree. Okay, I see shaking heads.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. I agree with especially the date part. I think that's a good idea for, as you said, accessing those the videos or the recordings of those particular talks, but then also to show the breadth of work, as you said, from that it goes from January to June, and that it's all this plethora of information coming at us is spread out. Gary, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Leah, the question I have is, I'm not sure if my memory is good about all the meetings we had in the first and second quarter, but I do know that from time to time, we take a look at our priorities list, and then we decide whether we should change any of those priorities. Did we not do that in the last 6 months? Because
No, oh, sorry, Sarah, can I answer that?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So Gary, that was done in the third and fourth quarter of 2024. So that will be coming up again, in the next couple of meetings.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks. So are there any other, as Leah was requesting, requests or recommendations that we want to make to the select board at this time? And this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Leah, this is as it relates to the last 6 months, or is it moving forward, we have these recommendations?
It would be for the last 6 months.
Okay. I would say one of the things, Leah, when you were starting to present, you were talking about highlights from the quarter, and I know you have given the highlights. If there's a need, this is not you have to do this, but if there's a need to do even a further summary slide, I think that basically the quick and dirty of what I'm seeing is we could say that we have multiple projects we've discussed multiple projects within the town that are moving forward at various stages, right? So there's things that are in the very much early planning stage, and then there's things that are kind of moving further along and have been funded, and that are all about protecting vital infrastructure. So even if someone's not caring as much about that individual project, it's showing that the committee is working on these really vital things in lots of different stages. And that then we've seen pertinent examples from other communities. So some of the other things that you presented fall into that bucket too. So the presentation from Boston, the conference as well, we're still learning from our other communities. And then of course the big thing is that third bucket is all the funding options and the ways that we can fund this. So those were just 3 buckets I felt like a lot of, or the different highlights kind of fell into. For what it's worth, whether that helps in the discussion of it or just another further summary, but that was how I was kind of thinking of it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sarah.
Anybody else or comment for Leah before we move on? Hillary?
Yes, thank you. I had two questions that might be worth raising with the select board. I noticed that it's a continuous question of how to raise awareness among the public for these projects, because we need public buy-in, and you get that when you work in advance to build it over time. And I think town administration can, it is most logical for town administration to be involved in facilitating that. So that might be a request, potentially. I'm thinking in particular, we haven't had any of these recently, but about 5 or 6 years ago, it was more common in my experience to have these host information sessions. Like, the DPW would have an information session. It would be on, say, a Thursday night, and it would be on such and such a topic. And I just remember Four Fairgrounds being packed with people because they knew they could ask questions and that all the people would be in the room. And that's something that like Erica Mooney would have to facilitate and advertise. So that's what I was thinking about. And then the second thing that popped into my mind about requests, again, I don't know if it's something the commission has been talking about or is relevant, but I think one of the big events that is now, I think it's being perceived as a sea level rise event is the power outage that happened over Stroll. And when I see these, notes about the high tide flooding on Easy Street and the soil saturation and rising groundwater, I think about those underground power lines. And the select board is generally the point of contact for everything to do with National Grid. National Grid's making a lot of requests of the island right now to opt in to voluntarily reduce consumption and opt in with smart meters. So that might be something to tie the resiliency message into and make it really clear to people that like this is a coastal flooding issue, if I'm correct about that.
Thanks, Hillary. I really like what the two things that you brought up, and I think that dovetails really well with our next agenda item too, which is discussing aspects of outreach and different ways we can communicate about all the work that CREC does. But at the same time, I think adding elements into the request of the select board, Leah, it's actually making me wonder if we can sort of pause on this aspect for a second, because if we talk about outreach next, there might be some things that come up that we would want to request from the select board. Or do you really want to we kind of want to approve this report first and then move on to the next?
So this report, I know it's still early July, but is only till the end of June.
Okay.
So the requests and recommendations would be from January to June. Generally, I go through the minutes, and if there's recommendations, then I just pop those into this slide. But I didn't see any, so that's why I'm just asking, trying to jog everyone's memory if there was something from January to June that I missed. Hillary, your requests or recommendations would be, if the committee would like them to be on the next quarter report. So, but yeah, two good things. I didn't hear about the outage being linked to sea level rise. But if you have any information, send it my way. I'm also going to be meeting with National Grid in the next couple of weeks as well, because they want an update about, all the coastal resiliency initiatives that the island's doing and how that may impact them, or, we'll have to coordinate, obviously with utility companies as well.
Great.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any requests or recommendations from that time frame, January to June.
It doesn't sound like it, and it sounds like you already went through the meeting minutes, which is kind of I was going to say. I was like, what did we talked about?
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no more edits or additions or questions, if someone wants to make a motion to
Sarah.
approve it.
Sarah, I had just one last minute thought.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Doug. I can't see if you don't officially raise your hand. It doesn't bring you to the top, so I couldn't see you. Go ahead, Doug.
For some reason, I've got it set so it should recognize my hand going up, and it's not. So I apologize for that.
No,
just a thought, and it occurred to me only kind of late in the going here of this conversation was Are there projects in particular that are of particular concern in the sense that we may be not making as much progress as we had hoped originally, right? I think these presentations oftentimes dwell on the accomplishments and the highlights and all the good news, but I imagine it would be helpful to us if the select board were aware of where we're running into a delay or running into a challenge that we did not anticipate. So I guess I'm asking more of a question for Leah. And us as a group, are there things that we feel we are falling behind on? I'm particularly, I have one issue. Everyone's got their own kind of hot buttons. I am particularly concerned about retreat and relocation and where we are on that project. And I know Leah has been making progress on that, but I just wonder if there's things we could be asking for help from the select board to help get unstuck. Is that a way to, I guess that's the way I'm putting it. I hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, Leah, do you want to respond to that at
Sure.
all?
Yeah, I can respond. I mean, every project, sometimes has a bump in the road, but there's not anything that's sticking out in my mind that would need to be raised to the select board at this time. To answer your question about the strategic retreat and relocation program, it's still in OpenGov for finance to go through, and when they approve it, go out to bid. So unfortunately, that can take months. And so I'm just waiting.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Doug.
I mean, I guess, Leah, that's a question. I would be wondering if there's does the select board have the ability to put in a good word for us with the finance department to help expedite that? That I guess would be my question. Or at least just make them aware that things are not progressing on that front because it's awaiting approval from the finance department, if that's how I understand your comment there. Does that make sense?
I would defer that to Matt as a select board member. If I can't see who's on. Okay.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, I mean, you could we as CRAC could make that request. I'm not sure what Brian has piled up. I know the sewer rates have taken a ton of time lately and that's supposed to be, on tomorrow. So you could make that request. We can't tell them what to do. We can request it. Libby can tell them what to do. So that's fine.
Thanks, Matt. I think, Doug, I appreciate what you're saying. So I think sometimes if they don't hear about something, it kind of goes back, like you don't realize it's kind of happening in the background or even.
Exactly.
And so I appreciate your question too, because some of it is that just the pace of a town project, right? Because things have to go, there's obviously different projects have different levels of permitting that you have to wait for, but then there's procurement, there's thinking of all the public comment periods for so many of these projects, which are vital and important, but it just makes every project, like the timeline is quite long in many ways. And so if there's any projects that are stalled for any reason, it doesn't mean that they're not like making forward progress, because if that's just the pace of the town, it's still happening, I guess, if that's I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, follow up with that, Sarah.
Yeah.
This is, sort of the relocation, this whole discussion is something that isn't going to come from us. It isn't going to come from a study that the select board pays some money and then it's magically solved. That is going to have to be at the zoning board, planning board level, at our level, at the select board level. Finance is going to have to be involved. There's a lot of steps to this. Maybe the study would give us help us get the right steps for it. And we probably all have our own ideas of what should be first, but I think, there's going to have to be public hearings and public sort of support built on this, and it's going to take years. This isn't going to happen immediately, or as quickly as Doug or I probably would want it. So anyway.
Thanks, Matt. I think, I think that's a good point, and just kind of keeping that in mind again for the next agenda item of outreach, because that might be something that, because it's a longer term thing, that's going to need many years, many kinds of hearings, and as you said, in different entities, like keeping it in mind for just how we talk about it. Gary, go ahead.
I just want to follow up with what Doug said, because I'm not quite sure I understand. When Leah said that we have to wait a year or two for something to happen, I was not under the impression that we were waiting for something that was within our town control. I thought there was a state governmental thing that we were waiting for. If it's something that is in our town control, I wasn't aware of that. And I remind you all that it's our second highest priority, either first or second highest priority. And so to me, that means it's really something that we ought to get going. But I'm a little confused as to what the holdup is. Is it something within our town administration, or is it a third party outside that we're waiting for?
Okay, thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks. I think we're getting a little off topic of
Yeah.
the agenda, but Gary, to answer your question, I'm not sure when I said 1 to 2 years for the strategic retreat and relocation program.
Yep.
Or I'll just give an overview of how procurement, which is clear as mud, works. So basically you have a project, you get funding for the project, the scope has to go through a website called OpenGov. And so it needs to be put in there correctly. Finance department, they look over that scope, they add anything that needs to be added and they're going through tons of these. So they're backed up. It gets approved. It goes out. People, depending on what it is, either send proposals or bids. You have to have a project team. They evaluate those bids or proposals. And then, and you don't know what the price is that these companies are estimating or coming in at when you're reading the proposals. Then you rate them through the different criteria that Massachusetts makes us do. And then once you have those rated and you have your top consultants, then the envelope for how much it costs opens. And then depending on if it's a proposal or a bid, you can either go with the person that was at number 1, or if it is related to the dollar value, you have to go to whoever is within budget. So procurement just generally takes a while. There's no really way to speed it up. It's just is what it is. So the scope is in OpenGov. It has been looked at, it's getting worked on by finance department, and it just hasn't been released yet. So that's where we're at.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Leah. I think, so just like to go back to what Leah is saying, we're getting a little off topic. It's good to have a progress, like we're getting this kind of progress report on where the different projects that are like where they're at in the trajectory of getting closer to completion. But this report is specifically for the last 6 months, and nothing has changed in terms of that aspect in the last 6 months. Is that correct, Leah? So nothing has changed with that. Okay. So, in order to, I think we can move on. If there's no other comments specific to the presentation of this report, we can, if I will entertain a motion to approve this 6-month report that Leah is going to present to the select board.
So moved.
Second, it's Matt.
Thanks, Matt. All right, well then roll call vote for approving the report. Gary Beller.
Aye.
Jen Carberg.
Aye.
Liz Phelps.
Aye.
Joanna Roche.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Hillary Rayport.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you, Leah. And I think anything else that people are kind of thinking about progress or where we're at with stuff, that can either move on to when we talk about outreach or next steps for the committee at some point too. All right, so Thank you, Leah, for that. Our next agenda item is a discussion of generating ideas to reduce, or sorry, for coastal resiliency outreach, including potential videos. So we've talked a little bit before about different ways we can communicate and outreach. I know Doug has done a lot with helping us with our social media, thinking about where our reach is and what, and I know that we, as we saw in Leah's presentation with Acclimate supporting making videos of like what we kind of focusing on us as CRAC members. But did you say we have some money, Leah, for outreach videos? Sorry, I can't remember that part. It's not on the
Yeah,
agenda.
so when Libby and Brian came on a couple meetings ago, Libby said that CRAC could use some money within the Article 10 Coastal Resiliency Planning for videos, or, outreach stuff. And I just want to remind you all that recommendation 1-1 within the Coastal Resiliency Plan is for community outreach and property resiliency, and CRAC is the champion for that. So you all are in charge of putting that out. So this agenda item, is just to talk about if we do videos, who would be the audience, what would be the content, how long should it be, how frequently, where would it be shown, all of that stuff.
So I think I'd like to run this as like a general discussion. And so I think and Leah can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think just to keep our thoughts organized would be really to think about what are the things that would be best suited for outreach right now, coming from the CRAC committee. So what is that content and the goals? And with that comes the question of who our audience is. And I think from that, we can go to length and how we want to view it. But I think let's think about what we want for content and who we're speaking to. Joanna?
Thank you. So one of the things that I've been thinking about in regard to this is that the way in which we've been communicating with the public has been very limited, right? It's mainly been through social media, right? I think we've talked a few times over the years, like, should we have a newsletter? Should we have meetings like Hillary said? And we've done some of those things, but nothing has really, I would say, stuck in any kind of particular way. I think that the video idea is sort of in the medium of the moment, if you will, because videos are a very popular way of communicating these days. And when I think about what it is that this group does and what the message really is, I think about us having a video at the Dreamland, right, in front of all the movies in the ways in which many other organizations do. But what I really think the video is about is, what does the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee do? And what are we doing and what have we been doing? Because I think that the basic level of communication really has not yet been met. I think that the video that Ava has done on Instagram, I think were very good. And I think that people responded well to them. But I think in the broader sense, I think kind of talking about and advertising that a group of people meet twice a month for many hours and discuss many things and prioritize things in a way of kind of illustrating to the community that there's an ongoing, concentrated group of people who are working on this, albeit slowly and sometimes painfully, that there is conversation happening. And that in order to move the ball down the field, other people need to be involved in this and other people need to understand what's going on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Joanna. I think I agree. So when you're thinking about like the kind of the Dreamland or having a video that's a little bit more generalized, I think we don't, kind of going back to what the content should be, I think that speaks to being a little bit more generalized in sense of instead of a specific project. Like I am envisioning something where maybe we can have images and highlight like projects or like in terms of the very tangible on the ground experimental projects, like I forget what they're called, Leah, those honeycomb things you put in the sand. Like this is like, you know, this
Yeah.
kind of visual representation of some of that, but in a bigger scope. Christy, go ahead, and then Doug.
Yeah, to Joanna's point, and I was thinking about the Dreamland, and then I was thinking about the avenues in which you know, send out information, and I think it's good to think about the options that you have, that people oftentimes, if it's on Facebook, you still need people to click on things to read it, you know, and I think that if you present it in a way that it's just there in front of them, they have to see it, whether they have to read it or visually watch it, that would be a way to think about which areas should we be targeting for outreach. And I think you know, Dreamland's a perfect example. Unfortunately, not as much people go to the movies these days, but the Dreamland's a perfect example of you know, people have to watch it, and you got to see it, and you know, and process it. Whereas you don't have to, you know, it's not something where you have to, if you're interested, you'll click on it. Otherwise, it's just going to get passed over. So Dreamland's a perfect example. I'm trying to think of some others that are sort of where you're forced to sort of watch it or read it. And so anyway, I was just thinking of that approach, but that is really the best example.
Before I get to Doug, I just want to say, when you said other examples, all I could think of was like when you're on the boat, like the High Line or the steamship, and if there's anything on the screen, you will look at it. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, my impression, maybe I'm wrong, but my impression was that when Ava began to talk to us about this program with Acclimate, the intent she had was to interview each of the members of CRAC, capture content that way, and that ultimately would take the form of some kind of highly edited, hopefully fabulously entertaining and engaging short video that would in fact air at the Dreamland. So I don't know where that project stands. My impression was that she first needed to interview each of us and capture as much of that content as she could, and then maybe it gets augmented with video on site, like Leah's saying, where, you know, let's go down to the beach and show the erosion control project that's going on there. But anyway, I guess it's more of a question than a statement. I thought that maybe Ava was intending to do that and that she's just in the process of pulling it together. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. As I understand it, and you know, Leah can correct me if I'm wrong, that was more of an individualized, right? So that was definitely about CRAC, and it was more about people as individuals. I think for the next step for outreach, having some funding that we can use towards it is going to allow us to have a cohesive message. So it's less individual, like, you know, I think it has to be a balance, right? Of, we want people to see us as community members, and you know, so that they hopefully people in the community feel represented on this committee. And so you're like, okay, there are people working on this for me. But at the same time, we want to have a cohesive message about what resiliency is and what we do. So I'm not to say that Ava hasn't been working towards that, but yeah. Doug and then Leah.
Well,
Sorry, Gary.
That's okay. When I think about this, first of all, I'm not terribly convinced that the public is really interested in the members of the committee. They should be interested in what we're working on. But to me, the most important question is this: to what extent do we want to motivate the public to do something with respect to seeing these videos? Is there something we need the public to do? Why? What are we asking? Are we asking them for anything? Is there anything for us to ask of them? We can't ask them to dip into their pockets. What we can do is tell them these are important, and then hope that they vote in favor of it at the annual town meeting. But that's about it. I mean, to me, the most important question is, if you're going to do a video to convince someone to do something, what is it that we're trying to convince the public to do?
Thanks, Gary. I think that's really important. What's our call to action, right? What is this, if we're doing a video, exactly what you said, what do we want people to do? Leah?
I just wanted to respond to Doug's
Oh, yeah.
question. I think Ava wants to do that, but I don't know any information about what she's thinking and or what that would look like. So I don't know if it would be a collaboration with CRAC or not, or just be coastal resiliency adaptation kind of in general. So I'll reach out to her and see about that. While we're talking about Acclimate, if there is anyone that still would like to participate in the videos but hasn't yet, please send your answers to me soon, and then I'll send those to the communications office to get approved, and then you can start the recording or filming.
Thanks, Leah. Hillary, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to emphasize agreement with what Gary said. I think, you know, you only have so many bites at the apple. So before you start any video or any communication project, it's important to know the goals. And I know you mentioned this in your preamble of what our discussion is going to be, but I think if we're building awareness to get voters at town meeting to consistently support coastal resiliency objectives, that's different than if our goal is to target homeowners to kind of raise their consciousness of their exposure, or if we're actually, maybe our target for communication are people in the town, you know, because there are people in town government who like think, oh yeah, we're doing this thing, but we're not really doing this thing. There's a lot of that in government in general. I don't know if I'm not saying it's specific here, but it might be. So those would be 3 different audiences, and having we might have different strategies for those 3 different audiences, or we might have more audiences. So I would be most comfortable supporting a channel and a product if I knew the audience and the goal.
Thanks, Hillary. So because I'm vice chair, I'm running the meeting today, I can tell you what I think. So I was thinking about this a lot because I agree with you, Hillary. I had in my head, it was like community, but it's both like homeowners, people who spend time on Nantucket. And I say homeowners because they can do something, but also people who live here who don't own homes. But then also, as you said, Hillary, like people in town government who work in other departments who kind of are like, oh, they deal with coastal resiliency, meaning us. And so like, we don't have to, I've definitely heard that. So when I'm thinking of like community awareness, the goal to me was more to lay the groundwork so that there's a general broad understanding of what coastal resiliency is and what we do before there's a bigger ask, like Gary saying, like if there's a vote at town meeting or a specific project that needs a lot of community support. So I was thinking of it as like not being a cinematographer, like a less about the CRAC committee specifically and more like what is coastal resiliency? Because when I say coastal resiliency broadly in the public, people, I'm generalizing here, but I think there's a like sea level rise and erosion, right? There's those like dramatic things. And if you're not experiencing that, other things that are happening to you are not coastal resiliency. So I think we can say like, what is coastal resiliency? And it could be like, that yes, erosion, yes, sea level rise, but then other impacts that we're seeing and everyone's experiencing, whether it's like sunny day flooding, whether it's, like you can't have access to your favorite place. Like, I don't know, like because I'm off the cuff, I'm not thinking about the good examples, but there's lots of other examples that you can point to every day that people are experiencing. Saltwater intrusion in your well in Matticat, like, I don't know, like harmful algal blooms. You can't go swimming in the pond near your house. Like just like things that are affecting everyone's everyday life here on the island that fall under coastal resiliency, climate change. I mean, obviously it's a very broad bucket. And so my examples might not be what we ultimately decide on, but I'm thinking of like, these are all things that fall into this category. And maybe they're all things that are part of the coastal resiliency plan, And then sort of tie in that there's a committee that's doing work on this throughout the year. Because I think many people don't hear about anything we do until either town meeting, something comes up, and then they, don't know anything, or there's something, or it's like, a very dramatic project or something that suddenly that they care about that one time. Does that make any sense? Sorry.
Yeah, they,
So-
when we're taking their rights away, that's when we're.
Yes, exactly, Matt. So it's like, kind of like I know with other committees too, when there's a town meeting vote, suddenly everyone's very involved, but it's like all of this work's going on all year that there's input and everything. And so, so I was thinking of it more of as an information, like what is coastal resiliency? And like, there's like all these little things and all these little snippets. And then like the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee helps the town and all these project kind of thing. Leah and then Doug.
Yeah, I really like that idea, like bringing it back to basics so that groundwork is laid. And I think that it could be multiple videos, right? Like people, their attention span these days is short. So like a 3-minute video, that might even be too long. Like, I don't know. You all can figure out how long it should be. And I'm sure there's a lot of information online, what people's attention spans are and how they absorb information. But yeah, laying the groundwork, and then I think also too, like highlighting what has already been ongoing and what is going to be on, like future stuff as well. Definitely should get in there projections. I know a lot of people don't like looking at data or graphs or anything like that, but like making it personable and relatable so that they do start, thinking about it at least and discussing it with their friends and family and thinking on their property, what could they do to become more resilient in the future, when insurance goes up or it's got completely gone, like what can they do on their property to ensure their safety. So I think it could be different videos that are targeted to different people and then, or, different, and then from there you can figure out where they should be broadcasted.
Thanks, Leah. Real quick before Doug, I just wanted to ask Leah, with this funding, what's the timeline that we have to use it? Is there a timeline we have to use it by or something like are we on okay.
No, there's no, the Article 10 money that doesn't go away. So,
Okay.
We're lucky about that.
Thank you. Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, just to remind everybody, it was in 2023 that we had a very similar conversation to this one, and it ultimately gave birth to what we'd hoped would be sort of a drumbeat of social media messaging. And if you recall, the folks that have been on Cracked for a while, each of us was assigned a topic, and we need you to develop content around that topic, ideally pulled directly from the CRP, and we'll put it out in social media. And that, I think we did a fairly good job of that for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And like all things, we lost a little bit of initiative around that because we got distracted with other things, and that's totally understandable. It feels like what we're doing now is coming full circle back to that. And I know there's misgivings about social media and its ability to reach everybody. I have the same doubts myself that any one of those is going to be all that impactful. I think the only way I can rationalize it is to say it's only meaningful if it's a consistent, sustained effort. Any one message is meaningless. And, we can do a brilliant 2-minute video that airs at the Dreamland. If it's not sustained, it's only going to reach a very small fraction of the audience that we care to reach. I would go back to the earlier conversation saying, who is the audience and what's the mission? To me, if we're talking about trying to affect votes at an upcoming town meeting, that's a totally different animal than talking at a more general level about our homeowners, taxpayers, long-term residents of Nantucket aware of how coastal resilience matters to them and their daily lives. That to me is much more of a general awareness campaign. That was, I think, the initiative behind our earlier work. And if you recall, the call to action was go look at the CRP. here's the link to the CRP. Go read it. Okay. I have no idea. There was no way to measure how much traffic it generated. I doubt that there was a lot, but that was the call to action back then. And I thought it made sense. Can't say that it was terribly effective because we just don't know. We generated a lot of impressions. But you know, I guess I'm trying to remind everybody we've had this conversation before. I'm sure we'll have it again. It comes up, you know, every 6 months or 9 months or something, and that's totally understandable. So I'll pause on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. I agree with the consistency and sustained effort, and I do think it's a little bit easier if we can pay someone to help us with that message. When we do it individually, we did our best with the tools and the funding we had. So yeah, I think it's a little different animal. Joanna, go ahead.
There we go. Sorry, unmuting. Whatever happened to the information that we got from Chuck Larson, right? That entire study that he did that kind of validated the sea level rise numbers. I wondered how, and maybe Leah, you can answer this. I wonder how that information got disseminated and if it did, because I thought that was really important, and because it really validated a lot of the claims that the CRP makes. And the fact that the town spent the time and money and energy to have Chuck go through that exercise, I thought was like a vote of this is important. So I'm curious as to how that was communicated or where that ever went.
Leah, do you know from the tide gauge work that Chuck did?
Yeah, so he presented to you all when was that? I think it was during the winter. I mean, it's in the packet, it was recorded. As far as where it's gone from there, I'm not sure. I'd have to reach out to Chuck. I know he was or is in the process of writing a scientific paper about it. And I told him that I would love to be an author on it as well. And I'm not sure where that stands.
Thanks, Leah. And I think, Joanna, to your point, I think it's really great to in whatever thing we end up doing, if we end up doing a video, to hit home the locally recorded data, you know, that it matches or verifies, or even if it's a little bit different, like we're seeing the effects, you know, these like bigger projections that people are making with broad-based data, that we're seeing it very really on the island.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Joanna. Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that this is a really good example of something that the town did that was exceptionally valuable. There was no press release. It didn't get an article in the Current. It didn't get an article in the Inky. And this is like important verification work that is very newsworthy, right? So it kind of like, I thought that was one of the best presentations we had this year. I thought that it was very compelling data. I think that you guys have all acknowledged and agree with me that it's local data verified by a town employee. This is significant. And like, yes, it's great that we know about it and the select board knows about it, but it needs to go beyond us.
Thank you, Joanna. Hillary, go ahead.
Yeah, I've found in the past that the point about the press picking stuff up, it's really valuable. And it also, it's like a flywheel, you know, because public awareness about public sentiment drives more public awareness and more public sentiment. So I'm wondering, because I'm hearing from the group that that we have funding for a communications initiative, that we want it to be about general awareness of the importance of the vulnerabilities that we have and the impacts of daily life, that these are tied to coastal resilience, or they're tied to climate, and that we're not just sitting here, we're doing things, and that we want, you know, whatever you are, if you're a town employee who could get involved, if you're a voter who could support a town meeting initiative, if you're a homeowner who could do something positive to manage stormwater on your property, for example, that we want to reach you with a message of that is about general awareness of both what the problem is, how it affects you, and what we're doing about it. And I'm thinking, I also heard Doug talk about, we don't really know, we had this initiative, it was about the CRP, and we used social media as our channel, and we targeted anyone who was interested generally to see the video to then go read the CRP, but we don't know, we know we executed well, but we don't know if it was effective. So I'm wondering if we might want to kick this, include in this set of initiatives a poll, that we might want to poll people for awareness before we do the campaign, and then poll them for awareness after. And if we poll them for awareness, we can also ask questions about like whether or not they knew about Chuck Larson's study. And then whatever our results are, it would be interesting for the general public. So that becomes a news item, which also drives awareness. So I wanted to advocate for including polling in both before and after, so that we can measure our success and raise awareness for the initiatives.
Thank you, Hillary. I'm always a fan of taking more data. All right, so in the interest of because this has been an open discussion of kind of moving forward from here, I think that we can revisit this at a future meeting. I will volunteer to sort of maybe pull together a summary of in a way. I mean, I know we obviously have meeting minutes and things, but kind of, I can write something up that we can share that's not a proposal, but like, here's some ideas that it sounds like what the culmination of some of our discussion is. Because I personally find it's easier to edit and comment on something if there's like something in place that you can then comment on. And the only other thing I'll add, just in my other capacity in my job, and we have worked with different people who have made videos in the past for us. And the people that we've hired have been really wonderful at helping guide those goals and ideas. So asking questions, simplifying scripts, like making sure that your message comes out. So while I think it's up to this group to decide on those goals and the audience, working with professionals can really help simplify and tailor that message for a broad audience. So I will advocate for using professionals. And the other piece of that is, I know, not to advocate for any particular companies, but what people that we've worked with before have, once you have a discussion with them about all those ideas and topics and everything, they can do a lot of filming, and the product can be multiple videos. So it's not like you're filming a 3-minute video, then you're filming a 30-second video, then it's all in the, I mean, maybe this is obvious to anybody, but it's all in the editing. So we can have that consistent message of a Dreamland video and social media snippets and whatever else we want to do. Obviously that affects the cost, but I just want to put it out there that I think that there are multiple options. And I really hear what Doug is saying about consistency and, intent over time, sustained effort, I guess. Are there any other comments on that before we kind of wrap this up for now, and then we'll probably revisit it at a future meeting?
I keep going back to the question I asked before, which is, let's suppose we have Chuck Larson's fabulous study, and it gets shown to all 40,000 people here in June or July, right? What do we expect them to do? Are we going to ask them to do anything? The answer is there's nothing for them to do when they see that. Maybe they'll say, you guys should be working faster. Maybe then they'll push the town to move this on the procurement list so we get some of that stuff done quicker. But what are we asking them to do? General awareness is great, but it only matters if there's a town meeting and there's a funding request, or if there's another issue that may prevent them from doing something. And normally they would say, no, you can't stop us from doing anything. This is our land. But when they are aware of it, they may realize that there are times that you can't keep building out to the edge of the water. But to me, general awareness is great. But then we say, what are we asking these people to do? Is there anything they should do immediately with respect to these general issues? And the answer is only if they can push the town to act faster, to provide more funding for us. Probably have to go through the town meeting So that, to me, that keep going to the question. It's great to have them knowledgeable, but once they get that knowledge, what are we asking them to do?
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think if we, for spending money, I think we want to be as general as possible, because if we spend a bunch of money and then we're asking a really specific thing, like vote yes or vote no or vote for this, blah, 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 then that only has a very short lifespan, right? That $5,000, whatever it is that we're spending. If it's these things are happening on Nantucket, my thought is, and we talk about this at my work a lot, people need to have a general, like, this is happening now thought, because if you propose something at town meeting and they're like, coastal resiliency is an issue for 2075 or 2100 or whatever, like it's future, then that will affect their vote. That will affect where they're spending their money. That will affect how they vote for a zoning issue, blah, blah, blah. But so that's where my take is on a more general, it's happening now. I like how Hillary phrased it. What the problem is, how it affects you, and what we're doing about it. Just like those three things, and that we're doing it all year round, to me feels important, because I don't think people know that. But you know, after having this conversation, we can all kind of ruminate on it a little bit more, and think about what that audience is and how we want to move forward. We're not going to solve it right now, obviously.
Yeah, Sarah, can I just say something real
Oh
quick?
yeah, please go ahead,
I
Liz.
can't find my hand raise button, but I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to add that I did notice, especially Leah's, the town's little video that they put up on Facebook and probably Instagram, but it showed the sunny day flooding on Easy Street and during high tide. And I think things like that are really important to draw attention to the public, because showing that, this is starting to become a problem now, and it's going to become more of a problem as sea level rise just, keeps getting worse. So I think that kind of just points people something that they can see that is like very obvious and very concerning, frankly. I think making the public aware of the largeness of the problem, and that it's important that we're having these discussions that aren't always easy to have, but that this is the reason that we're having them. I think those are great things to have in videos, especially social media videos.
Thanks, Liz. Go ahead, Jen.
Is my sound working okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Just, going to what Gary was saying, I'm appreciating this conversation, and I like the idea of using these videos to really get out all of that kind of general information of what's happening, to help people be more informed, not just of what's happening, but what we're doing as a crack, because I think it can be a little nebulous to people. And a lot of like when Sarah and I do a lot of our teaching, a lot of the feedback we get back is, oh, wow, we've learned a lot about climate change. This is really important. What can we do? It is that what can we do question that, you're saying, Gary. People want a call to action. And the biggest, kind of information that we can usually give people is be informed, go and speak up, listen to what's happening, pay attention, because as much as we're talking about what needs to happen, it's really the action at the town level that's going to impact what's happening, for our island and how we're being more resilient. But I think us just telling people that go get involved, go to the meetings, it's hard for them to grasp onto. It's hard to understand from that how they can be effective. So I think the track of us using things like videos, because yes, we've done social media blasts before, but I think these videos are really kind of helpful, are really the things that people grab onto and take bits of information from, using those to get a broader audience more informed, but also that, okay, here's what we're doing, here's what the town is doing, here's what your Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is doing, and here's the things you should maybe pay attention to in the next 6 months or the next year, be informed about, so that when things do come up at town meeting, you know how to stand up and speak. I think that's kind of as close of our call to action as we can get, but I also think, I hit my head against what actions we can give people, but if we can put some things into those videos, like ask your real estate agent about, where you are, and, understand where you are in the floodplain, those kinds of things, maybe we can push that as well. It's just my thought.
Thanks, Jen. All right, well, we'll see. We'll get this on a future agenda again and sort of revisit it. And like I said, I'll pull some ideas together so it's a little more cohesive for us to comment on. And I just want to reiterate, it doesn't have to be a one and done either. We can think about all the different things we'd like to do, and then within whatever scope our budget is, what we're able to do and piece it out so that we can kind of keep that in mind too. All right, so with no vote necessary on anything, we're going to move to agenda number 9. Leah, do you want to talk about this with moving to potentially 1 meeting a month for the summer? I know you and Peter have been talking about it more than I've been involved, so.
Yeah, sure. So the idea is to move it to 1 meeting per month, either for the summer or if we want to try, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. The thinking is, you know, everyone's been so busy. In the past, it's been kind of difficult to get quorum. And then the select board also haven't like reached out to CRAC to say, work on this thing. We need your advisory on this topic or whatever it may be. So the idea is not just to have a meeting to have a meeting, but to make sure that those meetings are concise and that information and things are getting done. So you can decide if you want it for the summer, if you want it for the year, if you want to do it 6 months and then revisit. There's also always the option to, if needed, if the select board reaches out for a particular topic and we need to have 2 meetings a month for hypothetical October, that's an option too.
Thanks, Leah. I would be in favor of doing it for at least several months. I know some of our like heaviest meetings where we've had lots of discussion and invited speakers come in have been in the off season anyway, where we've had, you know, like the harbor plan discussions, et cetera. And so I think those can be spaced out and without a specific, as you said, charge from the select board. I think it makes sense to have 1 meeting a month. I'm interested to hear what others think. Go ahead, Doug.
I always raise my hand when no one else is going to raise their hand. So
I appreciate it.
I am curious what Matt's feeling is on this. I know we've had a number of conversations, sort of philosophical debates in the past about whether CRAC needs to speak when spoken to or be proactive. And I'll vote a very strong vote in favor of being proactive. That we shouldn't be sitting in the corner waiting for select board to ask us what advice we can offer on a specific target or a specific issue. I think our role is broader than that. Our role is to be the advocates for the CRP and making sure that all the town entities and the community are supportive of moving it forward. And, you know, without a cheerleader for the CRP, it's one of those things that could easily become a document that's sitting on a bookshelf somewhere and people consult it when they're in the mood, but otherwise they move on with their daily lives. So I guess that's my personal feeling. And I think it does circle back to how often we meet. I think it's tempting to cut back and go to once a month. You know, selfishly, I think, hey, I could use the time on other things, but I just don't want that to become a signal that somehow we feel like our work is not important. And gee, we don't know what else to suggest, so we'll just take a break. Because I think then that becomes sort of an insidious effect on others. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Matt, do you have?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think I'm not so worried about taking a few meetings off in the summer. You know, maybe that's self-interest because I'm so busy and the select board does it, and you know, maybe it's self-interest. But I think that Doug is right. We should not wait to be asked by the select board or the staff. You know, we should be advocating for these, and we should be pushing and advocating for them even more quickly than, you know, they tell us it can be done, or otherwise there's so many emergencies at any one time that Libby and the rest of us are dealing with, that this will just keep getting pushed aside unless there's a strong voice that keeps saying, you know, this was supposed to be done. When are we getting this done? We have to be that advocacy in that role. I don't know if that requires us to meet, you know, every 2 weeks in the summer, especially if people are just going to, it's like my employees will just take the days off and make their own days off if they want. You know, as a committee, we do the same thing by default. You know, maybe we just schedule it and then make sure that we all show up for the, you know, the five or six meetings that we do have in the summer. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Go ahead, Hillary. Oh, Hillary, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Obviously, I'm the new person here, so I don't have strong opinions on what's best for this committee. But I will share that on the Historical Commission, we were a commission of 7 people. So we had a lot of capacity to work in small groups. And you know, obviously you follow open meeting law when you work in the small groups, and I can speak more to how we did that and what I learned about that. But the working groups can get a lot done in between meetings. So if you did want to move to 1 meeting a month, you might also take the opportunity to form smaller working groups on particular initiatives. And then when you work in a small group, the group can, it can be very nimble, very responsive, and then you can give reports at the monthly meeting, and you can really advance a lot of initiatives that way.
Thank you, Hillary. I think that's a great idea as we move forward with specifically certain projects or people with certain areas of expertise as we're moving forward. I would advocate for maybe, well, since we're already in July, like 1 meeting for July and August. And then moving into September, maybe 1 meeting in September. But I think my biggest point of advocacy for moving forward with meetings is to not stack the agenda. I think we've had a few meetings where our agenda was so packed that we didn't have time for a true discussion. And so I would say, and sometimes maybe the meeting ends up only being an hour if it's a light agenda item, but I would much rather us sit with something, talk it through, go through lots of different topics or you know, whatever the topic might be, so that we have a true discussion. And so I think I agree with what Doug and Matt were saying. I think, you know, it kind of keeps us, I think so personally, because I work in some of this field too, I'm always thinking about it, but I recognize that if you're only meeting once a month, it feels like we're not moving forward on projects. So does anyone else have any point of discussion before we kind of make a motion to do anything? Okay, I'm thinking 1 meeting July, 1 meeting August, September. Leah, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. So if you are going to move to 1 meeting, you should also decide if you want it to be the 2nd Tuesday or the 4th Tuesday of the month.
Go ahead, Joanna.
I think moving to 1 meeting a month would be fine. And I think to try it, Sarah, as was your suggestion, for 6 months would be a fine thing to do. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. I would be curious if we did a poll of the people in this group, whom all of us have been on this committee for a long time, right? 4 or 5 years, how effective we really think that we are, right? I think that we have spent a lot of time talking about the same things. And I think that we've prepared really good letters and reports for the select board, but we haven't gotten a super amount of feedback. I think that, you know, Leah and Vince before her have done a great job, right? All of that, like, that goes without saying. But are we really effective advocates of the Coastal Resiliency Plan? And what criteria would we use to evaluate our performance? I think that those are important things to consider if we're going to talk about reducing our meeting schedule. Because I'm looking at the, let's see, 12 people, 13 people on this call who are the most knowledgeable people on Nantucket likely about the Coastal Resiliency Plan, right? So that says something about how often and how deep this group has gone into some of these topics. And we've weighed in on things across the board, right? All kinds of things. We've written many letters, we've made many recommendations, but I wonder how effective we are and how we perceive our own effectiveness. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I appreciate what you're saying, Joanna, especially because we've had these discussions before, both in group and probably individually as well. But I think those are two different things about meeting schedule and effectiveness, right? So like, I think I would like us to be more effective. I would like us, as Matt said, to not wait. I mean, part of our charge certainly is to respond to the needs of the select board and what they would like advice on. But I think we can also be pushing that, kind of having an agenda, kind of working through things and like bringing them to the select board to kind of push in that way too. So I think I would like to see us move in that direction where we're taking on, if not more, but we're using, as Joanna said, that expertise in the room. We've had so many great conversations, learned from other communities, have experts and from many different fields talk about how they've dealt with aspects of resiliency in other communities. And I think that we can find different ways to bring that information to our island, as well as advancing the CRP. Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Joanna's point, like, what we all do know is we know, Leah, Vince, staff are super productive and helpful and really keep the ball rolling. For the committee, sometimes it seems like, we're in a holding pattern for a major coastal resiliency event, and really, we're really just trying to, we're trying to educate people for that. Just people's interest just wanes a little bit if there's not something to attach it to, some major event attached to it. I know that staff has been working on many coastal resiliency related projects and planning, just doesn't have the gravitas of an event, and so it's just one way to think about it. And how can we be as a committee productive with the projects or the messages that just don't have that gravitas yet, so just a few comments.
Thank you, Christy. Before I get to Gary, we do have later on the agenda, we're going to be wrapping up soon, but we have discussions of other meeting topics. And I think this can be certainly not just the meeting schedule, which we're going to resolve right now, but what other things do we want to tackle in upcoming meetings? Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, unlike Joanna, I don't have any doubt about our effectiveness when you think about the fact that we have all of these projects underway. We look at the list of priorities. We see some that have started, some that are in the works. Very few, of course, have been completed. But when I think about the fact that if we did not exist, much, much less would be done, much less focus would be given to those priorities indicated by the Coastal Resilience Plan. And we know that every one of the town bodies, whether it's the select board or the planning board or the HDC, when you think about it, they are so overloaded that it's amazing to think they can actually get most of the stuff done in the time they have to do it. So I think that we have been an important source in making sure that the results of the Coastal Resilience Plan and the priorities which they indicated are at least getting some attention. And I think without it, it would be far, far behind. So that's my own view.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, Christy, and then we're going to kind of wrap this up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I remember looking at the list that Leah had sent us of some of the projects and timing on those in the Fulling Mill or the marsh there, that that causeway where I think at one point we had a breach, maybe a few times. Project was slated for 2035. And for some reason, that one project to me is, I was like, why wouldn't we ramp that up and move it up sooner? It'll probably cost half the price to do it in the next, 6 years than it will be to do coming into 2035. And, and that would sort of kind of start the process of educating the public on the cost that it's going to take to, continue on those efforts, so it's just something to look at, as an option. And it is, obviously it's critical infrastructure, that roadway and access to that part of the island. But anyway.
Thanks, Christy. I think that's the Folgers Marsh project. Yeah. And I think as Leah said, there's lots of we're going to have a meeting at some point that includes, again, the priority projects and looking at that. And so I think with the more we learn and, as we move on in time too, we can rethink some of those priorities. I say that very easily. Leah's like, oh my God, don't change the priorities. But okay, I'm going to make a motion, if I can, to do one meeting a month for July, August, and September, and then continue with 2 meetings after that. And maybe those 2 meetings a month from October onward are light meetings. Maybe they're just like a lighter schedule, but just, I actually, kind of after this discussion, I'm thinking that having 2 meetings on the calendar might be useful for this group to kind of maintain work, even if, anyway, so that's what I would propose. Go ahead, Matt.
I'll second that proposal.
It's easier to cancel a meeting than to add meetings, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so Matt seconded. Okay, so we're going to do roll call vote on single meeting in July, August, and September, and then 2 meetings a month from October on.
Sorry, can I just make one comment? Thank you.
Sure.
Which is, as we free up some capacity, because we're going to 1 meeting for those 3, I know we are advisory to the select board, but the planning board and the NPNEDC, which I call, and many people call the planning commission for convenience, is also so important. The planning commission, for reasons you all know, and it might be an opportunity to see if we could get on their schedule. I don't know what the plan is for updates and interacting with them. Maybe someone could fill me in after the meeting, but that's something I'm very interested in.
Tim, were you raising your hand? I'm sorry.
No, I was slapping a bug.
Okay. Good thing you're not at an auction. All right.
Yeah.
So roll call vote for the meeting schedule adjustment. Okay, Leah, go ahead. Sorry.
For August and September, do you want it on the 2nd Tuesday or the 4th Tuesday?
I would say 2nd Tuesday, but is that like general? Okay, so for this roll call vote, it is for having the CRAC meeting for August and September be on the 2nd Tuesday at 10 a.m. Okay. I got some thumbs up. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so roll call vote, Gary Beller.
Aye.
Liz Phelps.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Hillary Report.
Aye.
Joanna Roche.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
I'll abstain on that one.
Okay, Jen Carberg.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
And Vice Chair votes aye. Thanks everybody for that discussion. I think we have done this unofficially in different summers where we have canceled meetings anyway. So I think this is not outside the realm of like something totally radical. All right, so next on the agenda are new business, committee reports. from anybody. So are there any reports from various committees? Doug, go ahead.
Not a committee, just the working group. And to answer Hillary's question, Hillary, there is a sub work group that consists of myself, Dave Iverson, Megan Trudell, Leah, and Leah, I'm going blank on the woman's name from
Shannon Holst.
Thank you, Shannon Holst, who's a brilliant addition to that work group. And the whole intent there was to try to get the planning board to understand and kind of advance some of the coastal resilience related topics. I'm sorry, the zoning related topics that have to do with CRP. And we agreed last time that we met, the only time that we've met as a subgroup, that Megan was going to take on crafting language around the most urgent sort of mandatory requirements to be compliant with Massachusetts state law. And I know she'd intended to get that work underway, at least in the month of May. And I have not heard anything since then. I don't know if Leah's heard anything from Shannon, but I do think it would be helpful, Hillary, if you could keep your ears open for that. And, you know, I think I'm very much with you. I think the planning and zoning related issues that pertain to the CRP are of critical concern. And it would be really good to have someone on the planning board that is keeping their ears and eyes open for us on that. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Leah?
Thanks, Sarah. Since there's some new members here, I just want to kind of explain what number 10 is. So that's on every agenda, and that's the place for you to give updates about, you know, any other the committee that you're representing, or the organization that you're representing, or maybe you're at large, but you work for certain organization that, you know, is working within the coastal resiliency realm. So it's really a time to share knowledge and give updates about that so everyone can learn and know what's going on. I do have one update. So there is the State of the Harbor Forum, which is on Tuesday, the 15th at 4:30 at the Great Harbor Yacht Club. And so that's a yearly forum that the Nantucket Land and Water Council puts on. And this year is focused on eelgrass. It's a free event. Usually there's raw bar and drinks after.
Cool. Hillary, go ahead.
Yeah, I have an update from the planning board. Has everyone been following the development or participating in sessions about our master plan update?
Mm-hmm.
Is that generally something people are aware of, or kind of, I see yeses and nos and maybes. So on Monday, the 14th, we are having a public hearing to accept the vision statement for Nantucket. So we have a draft vision statement. The vision statement is very important because it summarizes the community's aspirations and hopes for the island for the next 20 years. It's, in this case, it was developed in partnership with consultancy. It was reviewed twice by the planning board, and we have a draft. And the planning board is the steering committee for the master plan. Planning boards aren't always steering committees for community master plans, but in our case, that's how we're doing it. So the planning board will vote to adopt the vision statement. And so I would really love to have as much participation as possible at this public hearing on the 14th, or go to the master plan page on the website, which you can, if you find the planning board page, you can link to the master plan page and you can find the vision statement, read it, and send any comments you have. But it is going to be playing a really important role in deciding what laws we pass, what policies we adopt to shape the island in the future. It was developed based on public input through 3 different avenues. We had a survey, which you read about because the Current covered it. So importance of press liking to cover surveys. But there were other events. There were a series of focus groups, which we called kitchen conversations, which reached over 100 people. And then we also had a 2-day visioning workshop, which some of you probably attended. And if you want to look at any of those public engagement documents and, study them to figure out if you think the vision statement reflects what the public said they wanted in those plans, which is, the vision statement is not what the planning board thinks. The vision statement is what we heard from the community. But all of those public engagement documents have been summarized and printed out. They're available on the master plan website, but they're also printed and bound and available in the reference section of the Athenaeum. If you want to wander down there, you can look at them. It's public meeting, public hearing, and I hope everyone can be aware of it. Tell us what you think.
Thanks, Hillary. All right, any other committee business announcements? All right. And then wait, Tim, is there another bug?
No. Just really quickly, a ComCon update. The Bluff project is sort of now waiting for the state DEP to make a decision on. There are a whole bunch of appeals to the plan that CONCOM approved. So it's kind of stuck there until the state DEP makes a judgment. And what's the other item? I think the project over in Winnet where the guy cleared the wetland, basically it's the CONCOM decided to I'm not supposed to call it a fine, but it's some kind of, it has another language to it, but he's going to pay a fine. And that seems to be the restoration plan is in, and it all seems to be underway. Still tragic, but kind of handled. So anyway, that's just those two updates from CONCOM.
Thanks, Tim. All right. Moving on to upcoming meeting dates and topics. So Leah, you just knew how our vote was going to go. So our next meeting is August 12th on the agenda. I think one thing that I think would be good to have on the agenda is kind of that discussion of what are some of the things that we'd like to work on as a committee. Maybe Leah, do we usually do that at a certain time of year, or is that something that can be discussed in August?
Yeah, that can be discussed at any point. So.
Okay. All right, does anyone have, if you have any other topics that you'd like to see on future agendas, you can bring it up at this meeting or next meeting, or you can email Peter or Leah to have things added to the agenda.
Can I just make a plug?
Yeah.
So this is always generally the second to last agenda item, and usually we just sort of breeze over it and no one gives input about what they would like to discuss at upcoming meetings. It's really, really helpful for Peter and I if you give us topics. So again, we're not just having a meeting to have that meeting, but we're having targeted meetings where there's great discussion and making progress. So just wanted to plug that.
Go ahead, Doug.
While we're doing plugs, I just wanted to encourage the newcomers, especially to the commission, but also people that have been on the committee for a while, to read the CRP. It's a huge investment of time. It's not an easy read, but I think it's really important that all of us on this committee are well informed. And I myself have not looked at it for probably 6 months, and I'm feeling like I need to go back and refresh my memory, because I think it's really, it was a hugely important document, and it's really important that we understand it and can speak to it when asked with the public. Thanks. That was my plug.
Thanks, Doug. I think one thing I'll add to Doug's thing about what the CRP, I think one of the most useful parts of it is that whole first beginning. I think like the first 80 pages is just like where we're at now. Of course, that was in like 2020 is when it really was completed, even though it was adopted in 2021. So the data and the projections have been updated, but I think it's really interesting, before we get to the actual plan part, it's like, what's happening on Nantucket? And I think that's really informative and interesting. one thing I was gonna email you, Leah, but just in the interest of like, hey, we're gonna talk about topics. One thing that I would love to see for a future topic is I was inspired by at the June Coastal Conference. One thing they do on the Vineyard, not that we're copying them because they're terrible, but we they had I don't remember what they called it, but it was kind of like a coastal resilience fair. And I know Hillary just mentioned that of like having those information sessions, but it was kind of like in the off season, you know, kind of like at Mariah Mitchell has the Science Fest every year, and each organization has like a little table where they do an activity for kids. If we had an adult version that was like for coastal resilience, then we could have like all the different organizations and all the and the town entities that are working on coastal resilience or sea level rise or whatever in different realms. And it could be like there's one theme, kind of like the health fairs, you know, like there's one theme, but it's like all the different organizations involved. I don't know. I think that would be kind of interesting, but maybe it's a future discussion because obviously planning like something like that is not an easy thing, but that's my 2 cents for a future topic, not to be discussed now. All right. I think we have reached the end of our time. If anyone wants to make a motion to adjourn the meeting, I will entertain that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor, roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jim Brain,
Aye.
Hillary Report,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Liz Phelps,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
and Vice Chair votes aye. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in August.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.